Welcome back, everyone. We had started discussing education as a sector, in which we first took up school education, and we have already discussed the status of school education in India in the light of ASA 22 report, and also we have looked up into the issues related to school education in India according to your National Education Policy 2020. These are a few issues which have been highlighted by National Education Policy. Now, what we'll do is will take up suggestions from your national education policy as to how is it that they want to fix these issues that they have highlighted. So one thing is that you have to remember that they also have to improve the quality of education, access to education, and also the affordability aspect, because they're saying that because of rise in number of private schools across the country, the cost of education has also gone up. So they have to primarily fix these three issues, but their major focus is going to be on quality. Their major focus is going to be on quality by restructuring the curriculum, by suggesting your methods of teaching, etc. So let's take these up one by one. The first thing is that all the content that has been provided here is more than sufficient. I have given it in phrases and keywords. These have been directly taken up from your national education policy. So you need not worry about going through the entire policy again. All you have to do is whatever is there in current affairs becomes important for you. The way I was suggesting that on one of the components of national education policy in context of higher education, a question has already been asked. Another question has been asked relating national education policy and your sustainable development goal. Now, they can definitely ask a question on any other aspect of national education policy. But again, the limitation in asking questions from any aspect is that not every program under the national education policy is into implementation. They are still working their way out. So whatever comes in the news becomes important for you. So I'm telling you this again so that tomorrow, if you find a question on something new which has not been covered here, you should not feel that it was not discussed, because they will be it will be a component definitely of your national education policy. But the importance will come, you'll come to understand the importance only if it shows up in current affairs. So the way they were talking about improving the infrastructure of schools in Bihar, it can happen on a central level as well. Similarly, there can be reports related to, say, no detention policy, whether it is right or wrong. Then they can say, as they have already started working on the new NCRTs and new books, if it is in news, there can be a question on that as well. So let's take up all these suggestions one by one. So first thing is, they're talking about universal access at all levels of schooling, from pre-primary schools to grade 12, so that everyone has access to all levels of schooling. It should not be limited to, say, 6 to 16 years of age. It has to be across all the levels, starting at age 3. Now, if you look at that, the first thing that they're talking about is improving the gross enrollment ratio to 100% by 2030. Now, you see that this is a relatively short-term target. And we have already seen through our research report that the gross enrollment ratio has now improved considerably, and it is not going to take a lot of efforts to extend it to 100% of students. Then they are talking about having a provision of effective and sufficient infrastructure. We have seen that there are problems with respect to infrastructure. We do not have libraries, we do not have toilets, we do not have clean drinking water. So they are talking about creating provisions for the same. And again, it is not being implemented as of now. Yes, slowly and steadily, they're improving this infrastructure in schools. They are putting in more money. On the same note, they are talking about increasing the government expenditure in education to 6% of the GDP. It should be mentioned somewhere. We'll come to that. Now they're talking about alternative and innovative education centers, so that children who are dropping out, because this dropout happens because of multiple reasons, that students are not interested, students are not able to cope up with the say complex curriculum, they have to take up child labor, etc. So their initiative is to bring all these students back in the education system who have dropped out. They're talking about tracking the learning levels of students. So if all the students are there in school, they are performing. Now, yes, we still track this performance, but now that is generally in the form of grades. But now they are talking about their learning level, so that the idea of arranging students according to their skills or their ability can be taken up later at some stage. At some stage of implementation of this national education policy, maybe they can take up this initiative of arranging students according to their ability and not their age. Then they are talking about counselors and well-trained social workers to help student to so that everyone attends school. So, for instance, students might not be, and the parents might not be very well connected to the school administration, to their teachers, but they are definitely well connected to various social workers who are working in those areas. So they are talking about having them having a role to play in ensuring that students do not drop out of school, that they consistently attend school. Also, they are talking about having counselors. You would have seen that in your Western countries, in your developed countries, you have dedicated school counselors who do not just take care of their education, but they take care of all the aspects of their life. The way I was saying that the class teacher had a role to play, not just limited to our learning levels or our learning outcomes, but they had a role to play in shaping our personality over the years, which is not the case now. So they are planning to have dedicated counselors who are trained in that specific domain so that they can help students with career counseling as well. So you would have seen in convent schools, particularly after 10th standard or during 10th standard, these counselors help students to to choose which stream they have to go into. Then for 12th standard, after 12th standard, they help them take admission in a particular college, because there are some who want to fly abroad and continue their education there. Then there are others who want to crack the IIT. Then there are others who want to become IAS officers in the future. So tapping that potential or giving them direction at that young age. And you know that with the preparation that is going on right now, there might be a few who have started at an early age. And the ones who started at an early age, they have an advantage, because they have an advantage in the sense that they will have better learning curves. By the time you reach the examination stage, or you reach the age of examination, you would have developed considerably. You would have matured in these subjects considerably, because you are looking at the question papers, you are studying every year, you are reading newspaper every day for 3 4 years. So you obviously have an advantage. Similarly, they have advantage in the sense that if they start early and they feel 6 months down the line that, oh, I'm not able to cope up with this, no, this is not a field of my interest, so they can choose another field for that matter. But what happens now is we choose about a field only after a certain age, only after entering a specific system, that we get to understand that, okay, this is the direction I want to go into. But by that time, we would have started something else and it is already too late. Think of, say, 2 years of engineering, and then you realize, no, I would better suit, say, I would better take BBA as a course. But what about those 2 years? So they are talking about fixing this issue in higher education as well. So giving shape, giving directions to students at an early age is also important. Now, the second component of your policy is equitable and inclusive education. We are saying that a few students are left out because they have one or the other disadvantage. They can be economically disadvantaged. They can be disadvantaged on the basis of their gender. There can be tribal students who have a different cultural background. There can be a disadvantage in terms of geography, that someone is coming from a very, from a forested area or a very hilly terrain. So for that matter, they are coming up with special funds so that they can help them achieve that. So similarly, according to you guys, I've given you some data for scheduled caste, for differently abled students, etc. So these are the targeted groups that they're talking about. Now, when it comes to gender, they are creating a separate gender inclusion fund. Now, this gender inclusion fund will be meant for both girls and your transgenders or your third gender, particularly for students coming from disadvantaged regions. Then children with disability are also to be integrated in the schooling process from foundational to higher education stage. Now, there is this question for you. Differently abled students and say your regular students. What according to you should be the way? Should we have them study in silos in watertight compartments as we do now? That the differently abled children study separately, the other students study separately, and there is no interaction amongst those. That is one idea that we are following now. Another idea is that to make them sit together in a classroom, that all these students are studying in the same classroom. Which according to you is the better way? Which according to you is the better way? One or two? Make them study together or make them study in different institutions, in different specialized institutions. So Aditya says that let them study separately. But Aditya, what happens when these differently abled children have to encounter, have to interact with other people in the future? Because ultimately they would also want to take up one or the other kind of occupation. Don't you think they lag behind? What about others? What do you think? Okay, so Vishal says the second arrangement is better, wherein they sit in the classroom together. But he says that there has to be better infrastructure. But again, think about this. They're differently abled. There can be a few who have some or the other mental disorder, say an autistic child and other bunch of students. Don't you think their learning abilities, their learning capacities are different? Would they fit in the same classroom? Okay, so Aditya has given his reason saying that they should be in watertight compartments as they would not be able to, say, integrate well. Jen says they should get good exposure, hence second. Okay. Okay. Avni says that let's take the middle path. So that, because in first case there is mutual exclusion. In second case, there is a problem related to their cognitive ability. And Avni says, let's take a mixed approach. So a mixed approach can be, let them be in the same campus, but they can have their different classrooms. So that there is interaction, there is integration on the campus level. But yes, still you have separation when it comes to their learning standards. And you can go on monitoring their learning levels. And if you feel, you can integrate the classrooms as well. If you feel that there are a few students who are faring well, who are better compared to their counterparts, you push them in the other classroom so that there is a level of integration amongst these students. Okay, so you're talking about having a special faculty. They already have faculties who are trained in that aspect. Okay, so the best way is to take this third way, which is the middle path. Let them be in the same campus with separate classrooms so that there is interaction. They need to know about the outer world. They do not live in silos. Even these students, the students who are, by God's grace, who are all well, healthy, they should also get exposure. That there are children, there are others who are disadvantaged compared to you. Because otherwise, that's where we discuss all the hubris about merit. That most of the ones who become successful in life, they feel that their merit is their own making, without realizing that there are a lot of differences, there are a lot of inequalities prevalent in the society. So they should also get exposure to everything. Now, second part is they talk about achieving foundational literacy and numeracy. So we have looked at those learning outcomes from the ACER report, and we found that the learning outcomes are very poor. So to improve that, they are talking about achieving foundational literacy and numeracy by grade 3. How do they do that? We are yet to see that. Then we had discussed that there is an increased focus towards early childhood care and education. Now, this is something new, and hence it is important. Now, right now they have not have had a lot of discussion on this. But if at all you find this in discussion in your newspaper, please remember that it is going to show up in the examination for sure, because this is something new. This is basically a departure from your previous policy. So this is a departure from your previous policy. This is a good step, because if you do not create the base, uh, if the base is not strong, the entire building is not going to work out in the future. It is going to collapse someday or the other. So it is better to focus on this base and make the entire building, the infrastructure strong. And also you find that it is this age, till the age of 6, till the age of 6, that most of the development of a child's brain happens. That 85% of a child's cumulative brain development occurs prior to the age of 6. So it is important to take care of them, to focus on them, to nourish them at this age. So they are talking about ensuring quality early childhood care and education for all children between 3 to 6 years of age by the year 2025. And we see that the enrollment rates are pretty high in this age bracket. All they have to do is, and that's why the target is 2025. But again, they're talking about ensuring quality early childhood care and education. How do you do that? You have to change the curriculum. How do you do that? You have to prioritize various disadvantaged, socioeconomically disadvantaged regions and social groups, because ultimately it is students and children from these groups who are at a disadvantage, who lag behind. So pull them in the education system. Between 3 to 5 years of age, there'll be Anganwadis and preschools, where it is not going to be just all about studies or all about midday meal. It has to be a balance. They should have learnings from there. There should be, say, cognitive development for that matter. And then between the age of 5 to 6 years, which is a preparatory class or a balvatika that they're talking about, which basically introduces them to the curriculum in a playway based manner. Learning with fun, right? Learning playing games, learning through other modes of entertainment, so that they do not the students do not become reluctant. Because generally what happens at this age is students do not want to go to the school. Why? Because of the kind of curriculum we have, because of the sense of discipline that they have to get into. So it is better to make them learn and make learning itself a fun activity. Then for all this, to improve the quality, enhance the quality, they are talking about a separate framework. Now this framework has to be developed by NCRT. And also all the teachers, the Anganwadi workers, etc., also have to go through this early childhood care education training, so that they know how to do this. Because there is a question, what are these playway methods? Now this curriculum will be designed by NCRT, will be taken up by NCRT, and all these teachers and Anganwadi workers will be trained in it. Then comes your most important part. This is also important because, again, a departure from the past. So they are talking about enhancing flexibility and cross-curricular integration. So as already suggested, you can now take up multiple subjects of your choice. They can be from different streams, because ultimately there are two ideas about it. One is preparing a child early and sending them in this direction. Another way is to give them all the perspective, to give them all the exposure, and let them decide for themselves during their higher education which direction do they want to go into. So both ways, for that matter, are not problematic. But the problem with this way is that you get limited to this field. And that's where you find that students who are studying in your IITs, etc., who are into core same medical field, they are not aware about their surroundings. They're not aware what kind of changes are happening in the society. They're not aware what kind of changes are happening in the market. They're not aware which political leader they have to choose, right? So it is better you give them all round exposure and let them decide for themselves, because one is they get all the exposure, they get all the required information till their 12th standard, and then they take an informed decision, and this decision is going to be their own, so that ultimately they choose something that suits them better. Because if you take up one subject, one stream in 11th standard, and you carry on till 12th standard, and you find that no, I'm not interested in this, but you have already chosen a path, and there's no way you can shift from engineering to medical. The only way is to take admission in 11th standard again and do it all over again. So it is better to give them a glimpse of everything that they desire. Okay. Now, again, your textbook material is to be revised by NCRT and your state councils. Now, the idea is that the NCRT is going to make the basic framework, the basic textbook, but your state councils can introduce things related to their own culture, because every state in India has a different language, different culture, different way of living. So children should get exposure to their own region as well. So these SCRT, state councils, can also prepare their own curriculum. But it has to, the basic structure is to be derived from your NCRT to incorporate state flavor and material. Now, we were saying that your availability of textbook in regional languages is a problem. So they are talking about making these available in regional languages. Then if you remember, there was a commission which talked about, which basically measured the weight of a school bag and children. And they found that very often you find that the school bags are heavier than the children. So they're talking about reducing the weight of school bag. Now, this is not just say straightforward reducing the weight of school bags, but this is metaphorical in the sense that the complexity of curriculum, the volume of curriculum has to be changed. It has to be made gradual, so that they do not find themselves overburdened, because mental health is becoming a problem. Suicide rates are on an increase because of this curriculum, this complex curriculum, and the competition that follows. Because there are a few who have better cognitive ability, who have a better IQ, who fare well in these examinations, and the others feel that I have done something wrong, even though the system might have coerced them into taking that particular field or going in that particular direction. They might not at all be motivated about getting into an IIM, an IIT, or maybe your aims. They might want to go in some other direction. So you have to reduce the curriculum load. You have to reduce the pressure on students, because it is becoming, this is one of the newest challenge, because we have this young population which we want to turn into demographic dividend tomorrow, and we are not able to cater to them at a very young age. So to avoid that, there have to be suitable changes in the curriculum load, and it has to be made gradual. The complexity has to increase gradually. Then students will be taught at a young age the importance of doing what's right. So I was talking about value oriented education. I was talking about how they'll be preparing students for paper 4 right from the beginning, right from very young age. So they are talking about the importance of doing what's right. So doing what's right is not just about your traditional value system. It has to come from your constitution. It has to come from your society. It has to come from the social changes that are happening. Now, this curriculum also, so even though they have not specified whether they are going to have a separate subject, how it is going to be, but the idea is to inculcate that spirit, to have that environment of thinking. And yes, and you find that it is because of a school education that our focus, even during our UPSC preparation, is on cramming, is on getting entertained in the class, right? Cracking silly jokes, etc. Now, what is this? This is out of sheer habit. Even though we understand the importance of conducting serious lectures, even though we understand the importance of content delivery in the class, but we still want a little entertainment. We still want that the institution or the faculty should provide some notes that we can just go through, remember, and write in the examination. So they are talking about changing that as well, and to which will come in a moment. Now, another aspect is vocational education. So children, not just about education, but they have to get involved in extracurricular activities as well. So sports have to be given equal weightage. Vocational education has to be given equal weightage, so that in future it is easier for them to transition into work environment. Because what happens more often than not, that after your graduation, once you get placed, you find it very difficult or very hard to manage in the initial few years. Then also we feel that the only importance has to be given to education. But what about your say interpersonal skills? What about how you deal with people? So all those things will be incorporated right from a very young age, so that there is all round development. Now I know that it sounds very theoretical, very ideal, and we know that achieving all this is not going to be very simple, because the theoretical idea, the ideal behind no detention policy is very beautiful, but ultimately it has a lot of practical challenges. So everything is going to face challenges. So for example, the idea of doing what's right, at any given age you would not be able to figure out what is the right thing to do. It is not that simple. And again, if the teacher is doing that, then don't you think the values of the teacher will also come in between? The subjectivity of the teacher will also play a major role. That what kind of society the teacher is coming from, what is the basic understanding of various ideas of teachers. Not that those are not getting transferred today, they also get transferred today as well. But again, there's a lot of subjectivity in this. Then again, if you specify a curriculum, if you make a curriculum, then it becomes a mechanical activity. Then they would not achieve the end that they want to. Okay. Then they are talking about multilingualism, that it should not be just one language. They should be taught multiple languages. And at a early age, it is very easier to pick up languages. As you grow older, things become more and more complex. You have used similar languages for years, and it becomes a little hard to pick up languages. But at an early age, it is very simple, or it is comparatively easier to pick up new languages. So they are talking about keeping the medium of instruction as your mother tongue till grade 5 and 8 preferably. Not that they're not going to teach other languages, they're talking about introducing classical languages as well. Because even though classical languages can be chosen today, but do you think that if someone sitting in Punjab wants to learn Kannada, would they be able to do it? And the answer is no. Now they're saying that the schools have to provide these options across the country for classical languages, so that they learn all their traditional languages. They learn whatever language they want to learn. Then also your Indian Sign Language has to be standardized, because generally what happens is when you move from one region to another, the Indian Sign Language, there's no standard as such. So things change, right? The signs that they use for a particular word change, for a particular expression they change. So they are planning to standardize that as well. When are they going to start? How they are going to do it? Again, they have not started it yet. Then we come to the assessment part, the test part. They said in the issues we were saying that the curriculum becomes very complex. Then again, the focus is on rote learning, is on cramming. So they are saying that the tests have to be designed in such a manner that it tests their analytical skills, it tests their critical thinking and conceptual clarity, rather than their capacity to remember. Because if you remember, most of your tests, particularly till 12th standard, they tested your skills to remember. Look at your various tests, other tests. Don't you think whichever test you are taking up, for instance, the test for engineering services or any engineering college, you find that you have to remember those formulas, put them in place so that you get the desired answer really quick. So it is, again, the focus is on what? The focus is on remembering those things. Everything is very factual. So they are planning to change that. They are saying that We have to take a shift from rote learning and make our children, make our students more analytical so that they can think for themselves rather than just remembering what the teacher said. So why not change the assessment pattern so that they can promote this critical thinking, they can promote analytical thinking. Now also, they're talking about reforming the board exam, because right now, not just board exam, but other examination as well. You see that a lot of coaching, other institutions, and the help from various say e-learning platforms, etc., is required. But they want to reform it so that there is no need for coaching classes, because taking coaching classes, or the idea of coaching classes itself, is discriminatory. So if you have the money, you come here and we'll make you clear the examination. If you do not have the money, please stay at home. Try on your own. And if you're not able to, it's your fault. That's what the idea behind these expensive coaching classes is. So they want to eliminate this coaching class business. Then they're talking about making these board exams easier so that they uh, test their conceptual clarity, they test their core competency rather than other things. So they are making it easier because to remember everything is a very tough task. So they want to make it easier so that you can think, so that you can storm your brain, be reasonable about answers. Now, these board exams will occur on 2 occasions in any given area, because you can take up another examination for improvement if you want to. Then also, they are doing away with the no detention policy, as we have already discussed. So there'll be examinations at grade 3rd, 5th, and 8th level. So there would not be an examination every year. There'll be examination, there'll be simple examinations of testing each and every part of the syllabus, but they'll have measure these annual examinations for 3rd, 5th, and 8th standard. Then, as an extension to this assessment reform, they are creating a new body which is going to standardize various norms, standard, etc., for student assessment. That how you have to evaluate, what kind of tests you have to make, what is the basic standard, because you would have seen that UPSC follows a basic standard. These are the form of questions that they'll ask. Yes, they do make changes. Like this year, they made changes in the way they put up their options. But again, they follow a certain standard. So they are talking about standardizing these tests through Parak. Then coming to the next part, we had highlighted a lot of issues related to human resources in education, that is your teachers. So they're saying that if you know right now, your bachelor's in education is a 2-year course. That is basically meant for teacher training. It is mandatory if you are taking up school teaching. Now they are planning to reform that. They'll make it a 4-year affair. It has to be a 4-year integrated degree. Then they are talking about changing the curriculum. They're talking about having a test to get admission in B.Ed. Then they are also talking about these teacher eligibility tests even in private schools, because right now you know that in to say get employed in government schools, you need to clear either the state level eligibility test or the national level eligibility test. But now they are making it mandatory for private schools as well, that there should be a test, because generally in private schools, particularly in smaller towns, you find that the teachers are not qualified. And not just schools, I've seen even in colleges teachers who are not qualified, teachers who are just fresh out of their graduation, and they have maybe not even cleared their examination, they are taking up classes, them taking up classes. Then also we were talking about a second life career plan for your elderly. We were saying that they have this economic insecurity, they have this social insecurity in the later ages, so why not give them a second career? Mentoring by these retired and senior faculties. They can directly mentor students and teachers, and particularly teachers, because they have a lot of experience. They have, say, 30-35 years of experience teaching students, so they know various ways in which they can help teachers to actually teach students better. They are also talking about giving more autonomy to teacher. Now they have not specified, but it has more to do with curriculum and the pedagogical structure, the way in which they want to proceed, because now you have to stick to these strict guidelines of CBSE, that this is how you have to cover the syllabus. Yes, it is followed in a few places, in a few schools. It is not followed in others, etc. But now they're talking about giving teacher more autonomy as to how they want to go about the syllabus. Then there are going to be assessment tests for teachers as well. That they have to see whether the teacher is learning or not. And someone has asked this. I forgot the name. Someone had asked this, that why not have these professional development programs for teacher. So they are talking about continuous professional development, and every year 50 hours of this continuous professional development for teachers, so that they learn new things. They learn, say, because for instance, in matters of how to deal with children, or in matters of how to, say, improve their learning outcomes, etc., newer things, newer researches happen, newer papers are published. Apart from that, newer things on interpersonal skills, etc., keep coming up every now and then. But as we have discussed, that the teachers lose the zeal to learn newer things. So have this continuous professional development program. Now, what are the contents of it, etc., will be decided as and when they start implementing it. Similarly, we were saying that the pupil teacher ratio is less. They want to improve it. Then also there is going to be a body, national professional standards for teacher, which will decide their tenure, professional development efforts, how they are going to get promoted, what kind of increment are they going to get, so that there is a standard structure which is followed. Because right now it is very fragmented. Right now every institution follows their own practice, own different practice, right? So rather than this being on the idea of favoritism, yes, the discretion ultimately lies with the institution, but the standards are going to be set by this body. Now, your curriculum for teacher training and education is going to be changed. Now, this is to be done in consultation with NCRT, that how you have to bring about changes. Yes, Jens, you can say that, because as they say that teaching as a profession is not by choice, but it is because of the circumstances. So it is circumstantial, for that matter, that if people do not get any option, they enter the field of education, they enter the field of teaching. Teaching generally is considered to be the last option by most people, by most professionals. But it is not always the case, right? So standard setting and accreditation for school education, they're going to create a standard authority, which is going to create the similar standards for private and public schools, so that there is no gap, there is no, say, differential uh, learning outcomes. There are no differences between private and public schools. Because right now we see that if the moment you talk about public school, we feel that you're not going to learn anything. It's going to be problematic. Yes, there are few very good public schools, like your Kendriya Vidyalayas, etc. If all these schools have a similar standard, it would not matter whether you're going to a private or a public school. So the way the Delhi government has tried over the years to improve the quality of school education, particularly public schools, it is going to be more structured now. Yes, there can be criticisms on the basis of what kinds of implementation based problems they faced, but nevertheless they have improved a lot when it comes to public schools. Okay, now this was all about your school education. Moving on to your higher education now. Now when you think of higher education, now the average age group is 16 to 24 years of age, 23 years of age, because that's the age when you get into your graduation and post graduation. Now, for your school education, the basic background was prepared by your ASA report. For higher education, we have All India Survey on Higher Education by your Ministry of Education. But it is slightly old. It is from 2021. And let's wait if they come up with a newer survey. Now, this survey talks about the institution density. Basically, how many institutions, higher educational institutions, are there in a particular region. Because on that front, you'll find a lot of differences when it comes to various states. Then the gross enrollment ratio in higher education. Can anyone here suggest what is the gross enrollment ratio? What might be the gross enrollment ratio in higher education? Say if 100 students are passing from school education, are passing their 12th standard, how many of them actually go to higher education? Can someone suggest? Just a wild guess. Think of the 100 students that were there in your classroom when you were in 12th standard. How many of them took up higher education? So Jayant is saying 5 to 6%. Is it? So if your classroom was a classroom of 100 students, only 5 students took up to higher education. Are you sure? Vishal says 30%. Okay. Okay. So we'll look at the gross enrollment ratio, but again, it is not very good. It is very low. Because generally, I'll tell you. Yes, so you're talking about rural area, but we'll come to that. We'll come to that. But generally, the idea is most of you sitting here must be coming from private schools with a decent background. Most of them, because I'm not saying that you are here using digital means, but the idea is most of your private schools, say, go with English medium of instruction, right? And most of the public schools would take up the medium of instruction as the regional language. So most of you, I believe, would be coming from your private schools. And do you think in a classroom of 100 in a private school, only 10-20% students would take up to higher education? And it is actually not the case. Just think about your batchmates, just think about your friends, whether they took up higher education or not. And you'll find that the number is very high, right? Most of the students who are studying from good institutions, from good schools and areas, they take up higher education. But it is not the case with everyone. There are a lot of socio-economically disadvantaged sections, and the numbers will open your eyes, right? Because we believe a lot in the idea of merit, and it will be an eye opener. Okay. Then it'll also talk about pupil teacher ratio, the way they were talking about student teacher ratio or pupil teacher ratio in school. It'll also highlight the pupil teacher ratio in higher education as well. Then also they'll talk about gender parity. So let's look at a few graphs. You find that the enrollment of students is on a rise. Over the years, more and more number of students are getting enrolled in higher education institutions. Similarly, there has been an increase in the number of universities, there has been an increase in the number of colleges. But also you find that there is regional disparity. So basically, this is the population of students in the age group of 18 to 23 years in a particular region. And these, the size of the bubble denotes how many institutions are there. The size of the bubble basically denotes your number of colleges or your college density in that region. So take the case of Uttar Pradesh. So Uttar Pradesh has a high population of students in this age group, 18 to 23, but it also has a lot of institutions where these students can take admission. Then you look at the case of Bihar. Bihar has a comparable population to Maharashtra in this 18 to 23 age bracket, but look at the number of institutions Bihar has. Similarly, there are states like Karnataka where they do not have a very huge number of students in this age group, but they have considerably high number of institutions. So that means in a state like Karnataka or in Uttar Pradesh, access would not be a problem. There can be other problems. There can be problems related to quality. There can be problems related to affordability, but access is not a problem. But in a state like Bihar or West Bengal, you still have problems related to access because they do not have sufficient number of institutions to cater to the size of or the population of those students. Look at this. What I've done is, again, a similar way in which we proceeded with school education, that we have the observations from this report. Need not remember the numbers. All you have to do is you just have to understand that what are the basic trends. So there has been an increase in number of university and colleges overall, and even women exclusive universities. Then your number of colleges per lakh eligible population has also increased over the years. That means the number of institutions in proportion to the population is also increasing. Then most of your colleges are in rural areas, and you have equally good number of university in your rural areas. So the way in health we were saying that you do not have a lot of healthcare institutions in rural areas, we do not have that problem when it comes to education. So if people living in rural areas do have access to colleges and universities, but then there are regional differences, that there are states where you find there are huge number of say colleges and educational institutions. Then there are states which do not have, as already highlighted. You do not have to remember, just have to know. Then you find that most of your colleges are actually private colleges. Most of your colleges are private colleges, and for that matter, you have more number of standalone colleges than universities. Then also, if you look at enrollment rates in higher education, you do not have a lot of difference when it comes to male and female students. You were saying that gross enrollment ratio is different, and most of you were of the view that generally it'll be higher in boys. But if you look at the enrollment rate in male population, it is 26.7, but the gross enrollment rate in female population is more compared to your male population. That means more and more number of boys are taking up various forms of labor after the school. And now look at this number. This is less than 30%. So out of a class of 100, only 30% make it to higher educational institutions, which is very low. So they'll talk about increasing this number to 50%, at least 50% in a few years. So they have this target. How? They are going to incentivize people. They are going to say improve access. They are going to improve affordability, etc. Now, there has been an increase in the total enrollment in higher education. There has also been increase in the annual rate of increase in enrollment. I hope you are getting this. So if you look at this number, if you look at this graph, so there has been an increase in enrollment, also the rate of increase. Here you'll find this is the rate of increase. This is the difference and the rate of increase. But here it is also increasing over the years, right? You can look at the size of it. So Jayant, the question that you are asking, Jayant is saying, is our education at all aligned to the skills demanded by industry? Yes, it can be questioned. And also they have asked a question on this. They have asked a question on this, and we will come to that part. Do not worry about it. Because when we talk about school education, it is about learning experience. It is about exposure. When we talk about higher education, it has to do with your employment, for that matter, right? Ultimately, everyone is seeking employment. Then the gross enrollment ratio in your socio-economically backward classes has also increased. You also find an increase there. The number of teachers has also increased over the years, but again, there is gender inequality. That means there are less number of female teachers. It should be, I don't know, it should be close to 75. It got missed from the slide. So it is close to 75 per 100 male teachers. So the way our sex ratio is skewed, in a similar fashion, we find that when it comes to teachers in higher education, this is skewed. Apart from this, your national education policy has also highlighted other issues related to privatization. That these private institutions are profit oriented. The fee structure is, you know how it works. Then there is inherent discrimination when it comes to opening up of these colleges and admitting students, because it is discrimination on the basis of your economic status, right? Because it is very easier to say you'll find students graduating out of good colleges and getting 10 lakhs per annum. Then you'll compare them with students coming out of, say, a government college for humanities from their region itself and getting not more than 2 lakhs per annum, and will instantly start comparing. Your parents will start comparing that. Look at that fellow, he got, say, 10, 15, 20 lakhs per annum, and you got only, say, 1.5, 2 lakhs per annum. But you also have to see the inherent discrimination that is there. that this person has invested more in education and getting proportional return. This person has not invested a lot in education, or was not able to invest a lot in education and not getting a similar return. Then also in private colleges, what is the eligibility criteria for teachers? We know in government institutions, in government colleges, you have to clear the national eligibility test. That is the basic qualification. But in private colleges, this is not so. So the way we have approached privatization in your chapter on health, the similar fashion you have to approach privatization here as well. Then there are various regional differences, as already highlighted, and associated issues will come to this with skill development. Then the gross enrollment ratio in higher educational institutions is still very low, as we have looked at. It is not even 28. It is approximately 28%. So only 28 children, or less than 30 students out of 100 get enrolled in higher education. Now there are other issues, that there is a fragmentation when it comes to higher education ecosystem. Now this fragmentation is in two phases. One fragmentation is when it comes to your regulatory bodies. Different regulatory bodies for different courses, for different streams. Then other fragmentation is in the form of various standalone colleges. So they say that students are not getting exposure. One is that we work in silos. Our education system, our curriculum is working in silos. They do not give them exposure to other things. Similarly, they say that there are various standalone colleges who only have one course, a dedicated engineering college. So they are talking about creating multidisciplinary institutions, multidisciplinary universities, so that if they are within the same campus, there is interaction between medical students and engineering students and business students, so that there is a culture of innovation. They are talking about enhancing research, right? So this is the problem related to fragmentation, and this is how they are going to fix it. So the way they in which they are going to fix it will be taken up later. Now, even in our higher education system, again, the emphasis is on rote learning. It is not on cognitive skills. It is not on learning outcomes. It is not on skill-based learning. And the problem that you have highlighted, you're saying that how about the skills that they have to learn? There's a problem with that, because the industry goes on saying that please give us people who are skilled, please give us people who are employable. And we go on crying that there is no employment in the market. So we have to somehow bridge that gap. And we'll see how we are going to go about it. So one idea is that introduce vocational education right from the young age, so they get in a habit of it. They get to learn new things, so that they do not treat work as inferior or superior. Because generally, what is the traditional idea? The more you work with your hands, the more physical efforts you put, the lower status you get in the society. So they should not have that kind of say value laden ideas about the, the kind of work that they take up. Then the rigid separation of subjects is a problem, that you take up mechanical engineering and you go in that direction. Similarly, you take up business studies, you go in that direction. So this is also a problem, because students do not get exposure to other things. Then also you find that we do not have higher education. There are very limited number of institutions who take up higher education in local language. And I've already told you the problem. People coming from rural and disadvantaged sections and regions, they are not very fluent in English. How do they cope up with these courses? And you'll find that because of this reason, even though the enrollment rates have increased, even from rural areas, but you find that most of the students have to take up other subjects. They're not able to pursue professional courses. Why? Because of this language gap. So especially in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas. The limited teacher and institutional autonomy. You see that teachers they do not get any autonomy when it comes to the way curriculum is designed. Also, if you look at your colleges, your institution, they are being told by the university that they are affiliated to, that this is the course that you have to run, and they do not have any discretion. They cannot make any changes according to the demands of the industry, because there can be institutions are good enough to cater to the dynamics of the industry, so that they can prepare their students better, but because of this lack of autonomy, they are not able to. Then you do not have any career counseling and management services, neither for students nor for faculties. So the way we were talking about counselors in your school education, you need career management in higher education. Yes, you do have your training and placement officers, but you see that it is a very mechanical activity. All they do is they have contacts in a few industries to provide cheap or free labor. So they just get people recruited, students recruited as interns there. They just contact them for summer training, etc. They are not able to guide, because they're not trained in that, they're not able to guide them with their career, that this is the career you would better suit in, taking care of your interests and looking at the growth aspect of that particular career, etc. That kind of career counseling is required, because that's why most of the students coming from, say, okay kind of colleges, they do not find very good career options because they do not have awareness. Similarly, research, as we do not research at all in health, we do not research in education as well. So there has to be a push towards research in universities and colleges. For this, they have a very comprehensive program. They have National Research Foundation they are talking about. Then they are also talking about creating research specific universities, research universities. We will come to that in a moment. But the problem is that there is less emphasis on research. And now with these problems, we are going to move towards various suggestions as to how this national education policy wants to improve on these. Then there is lack of mutual research review by competing peers. You see that you have various peer reviewed journals, but again, they are very less in number. They are only limited to a certain section. They are only limited to a few universities, but it has to be comprehensive. Everyone has to be included. There have to be more and more peer reviewed journals for that matter, so that people can get their research published. Now, from here, we are going to move into suggestions, what your national education policy talks about, how they are planning to fix these issues. But before that, let's take a question which says, definition of GR. It is basically the gross enrollment ratio. You need not remember the definition. It is basically the number of students who are entering higher education out of the total number of students which are eligible. Number of students who are enrolling in higher education divided by total number of students who are eligible for that education. Now let's do one thing. Let's take a quick 10 minutes break. I also want to get warm water, and then we'll continue with our suggestions. We'll wind up your national education policy today, and we'll try to touch a few aspects of skill development as well. So okay, let's take a 10-minute break and meet again at 7:15 after the break. And if you have any other questions, we'll take them up after the break. Let's meet at 7:15 then. Welcome back, everyone. So we have highlighted the issues related to your higher education system in India, and let's look at various suggestions from your national education policy. They are talking about increasing the gross enrollment ratio to 50% by 2035. What they'll do is, this has because the gross enrollment ratio has various factors. One can be students are not able to afford higher education. Another issue can be it is not accessible. Quality of education can also be questioned, but ultimately, if you do not have an option, you will still take admission in some or the other institution. So they have to majorly take care of affordability and accessibility aspect. So what they are talking about is running open distance learning and online programs, that every institution will have the option. Right now we see that there are few universities which run open learning or distance courses and online courses, but then they'll give this uh, 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 autonomy to various institutions to run these kind of programs, whoever has the infrastructure. Now the thing is, with distance learning programs, we see that the affordability aspect is taken care of, the accessibility aspect is also taken care of. You see that most of the dropouts happen because students have to get engaged in some kind of work, some kind of paid labor, and they are not able to take up their higher education. They know very well that it will be detrimental to their career, because with qualification, with 70 out of 100 students having a qualification of 10 plus 2, they know that there is very limited scope for them in future. The jobs that they are going to take up are going to be dead end jobs, and they are not going to get any kind of promotion. So while they are working, they can take up these distance learning and online learning programs, which is going to help them with the affordability and accessibility aspect. Now one thing is that, but the problem is how efficient these courses are. Are they going to have equal value as your regular programs? Because today you find that you can take up distance learning programs, distance learning, you can take up your masters or whichever course you want, but they are not very well accepted. Even while going to take admission for your masters after a distance learning BA program, you find it difficult because a lot of colleges, universities do not accept those applications, saying that you do not have a regular degree, you are not eligible for the program. Similarly, when it comes to employment, distance learning becomes a problem, because your professional courses cannot be run through distance learning, because there is a lot of practical learning aspect which has to be linked, and you find that those students are not considered to be suitable candidates for the same. Now also we are saying that online program, but again digital divide comes into being, the efficiency of these programs comes into being, what value do they carry also comes into picture. So these can be a few problems related to these courses. Nevertheless, it'll be a good step so that students who are not uh, able to get higher education, many students will be able to get their qualification done through these courses. Now we were saying that there's no uh, push towards research in our higher educational system. So they are talking about restructuring these institutions into three categories. So they are talking about having research universities, teaching universities, and degree granting colleges. Now these degree granting colleges will be primarily focused on undergraduate teaching. Then you will have research universities which will focus equally on research and teaching. Then you'll have teaching universities which will focus primarily on teaching, but there'll be research component there as well. So this is how they want to restructure. Then also they want to transform all these kinds of higher educational institutions into multidisciplinary universities in the future. And by the year 2030, they want to have one multidisciplinary higher education institution in or near every district. Now, what is the purpose of these multidisciplinary universities? They say that in a multidisciplinary university, you'll have multiple courses, you'll have students and faculties from multiple courses who will ultimately interact with each other, who will ultimately contribute to the research environment, who will ultimately contribute to new innovation, etc. Because if you look at your best institutions across the globe, you find that most of them are multidisciplinary universities. Why? Because they'll have that kind of culture. Students will not be thinking and working in silos. They'll have interaction, they'll have exposure of other fields as well. Also, they're talking about giving them more flexibility in choosing their subjects. Right now, we find that if you take up medical courses, there is a lot less component of, say, uh, business with medical. But they are talking about introducing newer subjects, multidisciplinary form of curriculum, so that they get exposure to everything. They get to know more about other fields as well, because ultimately your engineering without any business and innovation ideas is not going to say lead to any kind of innovation. So this is the basic purpose behind these multidisciplinary universities. Now again, the target is 2030, and they should have already started working on this. And let's keep our eyes open. Let's keep looking for any kind of implementation plan that they come up in the news. Then to improve this research environment, to improve innovation, they are planning to start this National Research Foundation, which will basically fund and expand and promote research and innovation across your higher educational institutions. Now, it is not limited to only your professional courses, but other courses as well. Then they are talking about providing suitable incentive to the institution and to the one who carried out that research, so that they so that it keeps them motivated, so that others also feel that yes, I should also go for research, because you get recognized, because you get incentivized for the same. Then they are talking about financial support. The way they were talking about financial support in school education, the same thing is there for higher education as well, because a lot of students are not able to do it because of their various socioeconomic disadvantages. So they are talking about this socioeconomically disadvantaged group, in which you'll have SCs, STs, OBCs, differently abled women, etc., who will be supported financially. Then they are also talking about increasing the role of technology in education. Now, again, what will technology bring? Technology will bring good quality. Technology will improve access. Technology will improve affordability, right? You can access any kind of, say, course. You can access any kind of books sitting anywhere. You need not be physically present in the institution. Similarly, these courses will be cheaper compared to your regular brick and mortar classes. And a similar idea that your ebooks are always cheaper, at least 40 to 30 to 40% cheaper than your regular books, than your hardcover or your paperback. They are also talking about having this, say, what do you call this, repository of various books, research papers, etc., available online for free, so that students can use those. Because right now, yes, you have, but you have limited repositories, and those are paid. So they are talking about creating a government thing, and it is not something new. You already know that there are courses like NPTEL. Then you have various videos by CEC, UGC available online, which you can access for free. Similar lines, you have various Harvard courses available online for free, for which you can get a certification as well. So they are talking about enhancing the role of technology in education. But again, you know that there are problems with this technology. And the way we have approached digitization in health, you have to approach digitization in education as well. So if they talk about the critical analysis of increasing role of technology in education, you already know the answer, that it dulls the mind. The quality can be questioned. What about the digital divide? Right. So all these problems will still remain, even though you increase the role of technology in education. Then they are talking about increasing the investment in education to 6% of GDP. Now, this applies not only to higher education, this is the entire health budget. as I have suggested, that they're planning to increase it to at least 6% of the GDP, because that is what a desirable number is. Then your multidisciplinary education that they're talking about, as I was saying, that the curriculum of all these higher educational institutions should be made multidisciplinary. It should not be universities' prerogative, but all the higher education institutions should restructure their curriculum so that students get exposure to everything. Now, then also you find that after +2, if you take up admission in a degree course, and after 2 years you find that no, I do not want to continue, what qualification do you have? Your qualification is 10+2, and those 2 years of education, of higher education, go in vain. So what they are talking about is multiple exit options. Multiple exit options, like after 1 year you get a certificate, after 2 years you get a diploma, so on and so forth. Now again, there is a problem because it will somehow incentivize your dropouts, right? Because right now, if you drop out, you know that you would not have the basic qualification. But if they say that you will have the qualification, it will be an incentive enough for dropping out of educational institutions. Also, they would have to recalibrate, restructure the courses, the curriculum. Because right now, the curriculum is such that after 1 year of, say, graduation studies, you would not learn something considerable. So it has to be restructured in a manner so that even if students exit after a certain point, they will get some or the other skill. And that's why they're talking about vocational education being introduced at secondary level of education during your school and carried over, made skill based even in your higher education, so that students have something to learn. Now, if these children drop out, there has to be a repository where you can have all your credits that you have had. So you had uh, 1 year course and 2 year course from different colleges, universities. This academic bank of credit will digitally store all the academic credits that you have earned from various institutions. Then they are talking about multidisciplinary education, as already discussed, and research universities that we have already seen in the restructuring of various higher educational institutions. Then when it comes to regulatory structure, we were saying that it is fragmented. So now they are talking about setting up a higher education commission of India, which will have 4 independent verticals. Right now, the function of regulation, accreditation, funding, and setting academic standards are segregated. Now there'll be one body, one higher education commission of India, with 4 independent verticals, which will take care of each and every aspect. Then they'll also create a dispute resolution body of experts under this higher education commission. Now, one question is, which can become important, that what is the difference between the present day University Grants Commission and your Higher Education Commission of India? Now, this is your homework that you have to take up. And if you're not, and also what we'll do is we'll add this content or this differentiation between these two bodies in your ARM, because this has been widely discussed and debated in your media already. So please do this homework. This is the second homework for the day. Please do this homework, go through this, and this is easy to understand the way they are taking care of the fragmentation of your education system. So we were saying that it is fragmented in two ways. One is your regulation. So they are changing the regulatory structure. They are setting up Higher Education Commission of India, which will have 4 independent verticals. This is what restructuring and taking care of the fragmentation. Also, the fragmentation at the curriculum level has also been taken care of by your multidisciplinary universities, multidisciplinary institutions. That there'll be institutions which will have all the courses together, thereby taking care of the fragmentation that is there. Now, to improve research, one is that they already have, we have already discussed your National Research Foundation. Then you find that when it comes to investment in research and innovation, in India, it is only 0.69% of the GDP, whereas in other developed countries, it is way more than that. So this National Research Foundation that they are talking about will facilitate quality research in our country, will be the body which will take up funding of various research projects. Then there is this idea of internationalization, on which they have already asked a question. So they're saying, to improve the quality of education, let's go with internationalization. It is being done in two ways. So they are saying selected top global universities should be permitted to open up their campuses in India and operate in India. That is one form of internationalization. So your foreign universities opening up their campuses in India. Similarly, they are saying good performing or high performing Indian institutions should open up their campuses abroad in foreign countries. And recently, this form of internationalization was in news with respect to your IIT Madras in Delhi, that they are planning to open up their institution, open up their campuses in other countries. Now, the basic question here is, how is it going to improve the quality? How is it going to improve the quality of education? Are there some problems related to this? Can someone suggest how this internationalization is going to improve the quality? Because you can think of other factors, that if those universities open up here, there'll be improved accessibility to those colleges. If those open up here, there'll be improved affordability, because if you go, if you travel all the way to US or Canada or any other European country, what is the cost of living? So it will become more affordable. But there can be problem related to regulation as well. And these universities, when they open up their campuses in India, they are going to generate employment. So these are simple. But what about quality of education? Because the question that they've asked in the past is basically on this aspect of internationalization in the year 21 or 22, I'm not sure which year. And they have asked it specifically in the context of how is it going to improve the quality of education? Okay. Aditya, the question is how? Yes, so one idea is that you get more exposure. You get exposure, not just your students, but even your universities and colleges and other higher educational institutions in India get exposure to the way their curriculum is structured. They get exposure to the way they take up research, will get exposed to the way they teach in the classroom, which will ultimately have an impact on quality. Similarly, there'll be, yes, exchange of teaching culture. There'll be exchange on cultural level as well, because you see that various your top universities, they have cultural exchange programs, wherein students from one university campus in India go to other university campuses across the globe. So it is a cultural mixing experience, plus you get a lot of exposure to improve quality. So look at this question once. So this is on one aspect of internationalization. They can definitely ask a question on the second aspect, which is in news right now, wherein they talk about high performing Indian universities encouraged to open up campuses abroad. So this is the question on the first dimension, which says the quality of higher education in India requires major improvements to make it internationally competitive. So first thing is that in the introduction, you address this part, that what are these major improvements that are required. So you know that it is primarily about quality, curriculum, innovation, and research. Then they say, do you think that the entry of foreign educational institutions, what is that? One aspect of internationalization, would help improve the quality of technical and higher education in the country? Discuss. This was the question, and you have already given the answer to this. New academic studies will be brought in a more structured manner. Yes. So basically, what you'll do is, in the introduction, you will address what are the major improvements that are required. And again, see, they have mentioned quality. Look at this, improve the quality. So we are not going to talk about that it is going to create employment. It is going to have various regulatory issues, etc. Whether they'll have the autonomy to grant degrees. So you'll say that because of improved competition, because of improved your exposure, etc., they are going to improve the quality. So this is basically the answer to this, right? Similarly, they can ask a question on the other aspect. And also remember that Indian institutions opening up their campuses in foreign countries is going to bring in the same benefits, that they get exposure, they get to work in a very competitive environment, and they have to improve. So any improvement in an IIT based in Europe will also lead to improvement in the IITs based in India. Why? Because they are consistently sharing their views, everything. Yes, so our universities will get international recognition, etc. Yes, great. These are also points. But what I've told you is the question was based on your quality aspect. So collaboration will improve quality. Even though I've mentioned other parts like employment, accessibility, more number of options, regulatory decision making might get affected, so that you have a complete answer. But the idea is about quality. So you have to expand on these 2 points for that matter. Now, apart from that, they are talking about introducing vocational education, and the status of vocational education in India is that in the age group of 19 to 24, only 5% of India's workforce gets any kind of vocational education. Compare this to USA, compare this to Germany, compare this to South Korea. So that's why they're talking about integrating vocational education in school, at the secondary level, and in higher educational institutions in a phased manner over the next 10 years. So slowly and steadily, they'll go on integrating vocational education in our curriculum. Then also, again, they have a national mission for mentoring, wherein your retired and outstanding senior faculties are going to help us, are going to help our teachers improve in a lot of dimensions, are going to share their experience, etc. Now, another idea related to education is, what is the impact of globalization on education? Now, again, a very simple question, that the impact of globalization is going to be positive and negative. Now, most of your points will come from internationalization, enhanced competition, etc. But again, the question can be specific. Yes, they're not going to ask a question directly on globalization and education, but I want everyone here to make this chart in your notes, because this is a good brainstorming exercise and it will be like a quick revision for internationalization, because globalization and internationalization will have a similar kind of impact. So there'll be technology sharing, there'll be exposure to different cultures, there'll be exposure to different teaching methodologies, etc. Right? Similarly, digitization and education, it will have both positive and negative impacts, as already discussed. So this is also an exercise that you have to take up while preparing your notes. Please mention this as your homework that you have to do in your notes. Again, it is a good brainstorming exercise. Please take it up. Now, the next part that we are going to move into is skill development. Now, our framework for skill development is coming from your skill development policy. What I'll do is, first, look at the same facts that were there, because your national education policy has borrowed from this report, from your skill development policy. So the percentage of Indian population, Indian workforce in the age group of 19 to 24, what is the level of vocational education that they get, any kind of formal skill training that they get. And also in India, we see that it is important for us to get into skilling. Skilling is significant because we have a huge young population. And if you remember from our discussion and debate on demographic dividend, we were saying that this youth bulge that we have, this high proportion of young people in our population, is going to be useful only when we educate and train them. So we have to remember that India has a very high significance of skilling. Now, what they've done is they have given you a few suggestions. There are issues, and there'll be your suggestions together. So, as I was saying, that the social and traditional view sees that the status of people who work in manual labor, or a person, the more they work with hands, the lower the status they get. That is what the idea is. How can they fix this? Through vocational education, vocational training, right? Because they'll be taught how to go around pottery, they'll be taught what the things about gardening, etc. Right now they do not have a plan for this, but these are going to be components, so that students do not shy away from working with their hands, because we have seen that we attach value on the basis of the prestige or the status you get in society. We see that IAS, yes, is a good option, but the moment we say, what about multitasking staff, we do not think about their contribution to common good, we do not think about their contribution to the country, we instantly accord it a lower position. That is what the social and traditional view about various kind of occupation is. Similarly, you'll find that the culture in Japan is, they have the similar culture as we had in the Gurukul days. The students are made to work with their hands. Students are responsible for cleaning the premises. Students are responsible for taking care of the gardens. Students are responsible for keeping their surroundings clean. So they are also assigned responsibilities apart from their education. And that's why they have, when it comes to Japan, you see that they are hardworking. We see that the work culture is very good. These are the reasons. Why? Because right from the early childhood, they are taught all those things. They are taught that nothing is good or bad, nothing is superior or inferior. And one should know everything, because ultimately you find that once you go for graduation, once you are out of hostel, go take up employment somewhere, you do not know how to cook. You do not know the basics of sanitation and personal hygiene, which becomes problematic and which takes years to get over. And some are not able to get over those things even towards the end of their lives. Also, if you look at micro, small, and medium sectors, MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, you find that they treat your skilled and unskilled labor at par. They do not differentiate a lot. There is no incentive for the skilled labor to work there. You'll find that these are the, most significant employers. They employ a lot of people across the country. And you find that your engineers are working there for a petty sum. They're working as supervisors. So they are not putting their skills that they have acquired to use. Also, they do not have any kind of incentive. Why? Because they are being treated at par like other unskilled labor. Also, we see that your skill development programs of central government, there are many, but their efficiency, their effectiveness can be questioned. And also you find that there is no coordination across departments. So various departments are running these skill development programs without any coordination with another department. And these skill development programs, that not just the government, but even your private players, just think about your cheap online courses that are available for skill development. Are they any good? Are they any effective? Can they help you secure a decent job? And the answer is no. Why? Because they are not aligned to the skills that the industry demands. And again, when we say skill development programs, it is not just basic, say, stitching, plumbing work, etc. These skill development programs range from coding, etc. It can be about coding, it can be about teaching. So these can be uh, any kind of skill development programs. So their effectiveness can be questioned. Then also, we find that most of our workforce, that is 93% of our workforce, is engaged in unorganized sector. And in unorganized sector, you know that highly specialized skills are not required. And that's why people stay away from skill development. And that is the reason the industry says that we do not find people who are employable. We do not find people who are skilled. If we find skilled people, we'll instantly employ them. So they face this challenge of employability of individuals, and people face this challenge of not getting any kind of good employment. And then also, on the basis of the demography of various states, we face various challenges. And again, your skill development has to be in that direction, because there are states where you have more of service sector. So if you impart industrial skills there, it is not going to be put to use. And always it is better. And we were talking about equitable development, right? We were saying that regional disparities also create regionalism. Regional disparities become a problem in the national development. Regional disparities also lead to more migration. To fix all those problems, let's have skill development programs which are aligned to the specific skills required for that state, which addresses the specific challenges of the population of that particular state. Then you find that various free training programs, etc., have limitations of quality and employability, as already highlighted. The quality of those programs is not very good. And again, employability can be questioned, whether they are using skills that are required by the industry. And not just that, you find that the industry is very dynamic. That the industry is dynamic in the sense that every day some new technology, some new skill is coming into picture. And if you do not brace yourself to those dynamics, you are left behind. And these skill development programs are very static. These skill development programs do not cater to the industry demands. So what is the solution? Let's have stakeholder approach. Let's make these people from industry a stakeholder in these skill development programs. Let them spearhead a few skill development programs because they would know the best what do we need, because they know what kind of people, what kind of skills are we looking for. So let's make them stakeholders. The way I was saying that in your college, when it comes to a placement, you generally have training and placement officers who have contacts in a few industries and they get people employed there in minimum wages, etc. But what if there is there is coordination with the industry right from the beginning of your session, and over the 4 years you learn in a phased manner the kind of skills that are required by the industry. Even our professional and technological courses like engineering are not getting you skilled enough to secure a job, because most people find it difficult. The ones who get a job, they also find it difficult to relate to the work environment that is there, particularly working with their seniors who have experience, who know what kind of specific skills are required. At the same time, you do not know in which direction you have to move. So basically, this limitation of skill development, that skill development has no linkages with industry and employer, this can be fixed with that. Then also, the trainers of these skill development programs should be good quality. They themselves should be trained better. They should be people coming from the industry itself rather than coming from, say, engineering background. They should be someone who is engaged, who's working with the industries, because these skill development programs are not very long. So maybe a month or 15 days in a semester. So because it is best for both the industry and the students who are going to get employed in these industries tomorrow. And these industries will get skilled labor. They can impart those skills without paying them any money over 2, 3, 4 years in a phased manner. And they get people which they can absorb at a later stage. So these kind of things can be done. Then also, our education is not linked to industry skills and demand. What is the solution? Vocational education, as highlighted by your thing, by your national education policy. So Jayant is saying that he has seen companies train employees after they hire. Yes, that is what happens. So they can save on that 3 or 2 months of salary if they can train them beforehand. Yes, some part of training is necessary so that the new employees get adjusted to the work environment that the industry has, that their company has. They get to know about various organizational values, objectives, etc. That is required. But yes, the basic skills can be imparted beforehand. Why do you have to teach them advanced Excel after they enter the organization? And then these very industries complain about not getting skilled people to be employed. Impart these skills beforehand. And not just this, they have to upskill people who are working in these organizations. The skill development is not limited to pre-job. Even after you get a job, you should be able to upskill. You look at your corporates, you look at your big four, they provide their employees with an array of courses for skill development so that they can take up those courses. One, that skill development is going to help them with the work that they are doing right now, is going to help them with their career in the future, is going to help them with career transition within the organization as well, because the organization can also get skilled people because they have done those courses. Why not other industries, other organizations do this? And this is a particular issue with Indian organizations, that they do not believe in career advancement, because they do not understand that if a person is working in an organization, they are also looking for something. They are also looking for career advancement, that they should be skilled. Ultimately, it is for the benefit of your organization. Then again, labor rate participation of women is a problem. Improve it, having women specific skill development programs. But then they have skill development programs specially meant for women, but there are problems. Why? Because of gender stereotyping. The skill development programs available for women are limited to stitching, are limited to weaving, tailoring, etc. What is that? Gender stereotyping, the idea of pink collar jobs. But also, we were saying that with pink collar jobs, we do not question the idea of why it's only men who are plumbers. Why is it only men who are electricians? Why is it men who are generally manual laborers? But the idea is that let's give people more choice. Let's give people more options to choose from so that they can take a better decision. And again, this skill development is not just limited to securing jobs, it extends to entrepreneurship as well. That there are a lot of people who want to become entrepreneurs. And particularly after the success of a lot of startups in the past 2 decades, a lot of people want to take up entrepreneurship. They want to take up business. They want to start their startups, have their startups, because they have brilliant ideas. But the problem there is funding. So yes, in this regard, you have your incubation centers, etc. I hope everyone is aware about your incubation centers, etc., wherein they help these people with their startups, right? They also help them with funding aspect as well. Then on-job training and upskilling, as already discussed. Then you can improve or you can increase the role of information and communication technology in skilling, particularly your soft skills and your technical skills, because it is very easy to teach, say, your, for example, PowerPoint presentation, advanced Excel, data sciences, or say data analytics. These things can simply be taught over the internet. There can be dedicated online programs. Yes, we do have private dedicated programs, but the ones that are good are not affordable, and the ones that are cheap are very static. They do not make any changes. It is only about the basics of that thing, which cannot guarantee any kind of employment. And also, when you have these courses, let's have a certification with it, and also have placement support, which is being done by various private players. But again, those courses are very expensive, out of reach. And even your government universities, for example, your IIMs have 6-month certification programs, etc., but they range in lakhs. But the fee is like 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, without any placement support for that matter. So let's restructure this. Let's make it simpler. Then also, counseling and guidance, as we are saying in the field of education, similarly, counseling and guidance have become a problem to skill development as well, because there is absolutely no one to whom they can speak their mind. There is absolutely no one who can help them in getting a job. Now there are various professionals, particularly HR professionals, who help and guide uh, uh, people applying for various kinds of jobs. They charge some or the other price. They help them with their professional development, but it has to be done on a larger scale, because it is limited to organized sector, and we see most of our people are working in the unorganized sector. Now let's look at this question. It is a fairly simple question. Young people are a major human resource for development, okay, key agents of social change, and the driving force of economic development and technological innovation and advancement. In this context, discuss the challenges that India is facing in utilizing the youth bulge. What is this youth bulge? The proportion of young in our population is the highest, right? That's why we say that because we have a young population, this can get converted to demographic dividend tomorrow. But how do you do that? You do that by skilling them, providing them with education, providing them with basic health services, etc. So the basic idea is human development. So how do you utilize this youth bulge to convert it into demographic dividend? And we have to discuss the challenges that will be faced here. So there can be challenges when it comes to education. There can be challenges when it comes to skilling. There can be challenges when it comes to education or health. So what you can do is just whatever has been provided here in the PPT is sufficient for this. All you have to do is you try to relate these as well. So you talk about that education would not help if they are not skilled, because all these aspects have to go hand in hand. This is something that you have to emphasize on. It is a relatively simple question just to help you compress everything, because last 2 chapters have been fairly factual: your national health policy and your national education policy, and then your skill development policy. So to put everything together, this question is going to help you with that. So this is a practice question that you have to take up. Apart from this year they had asked a question about human development. This year, they had asked a question in paper 2 about human development, that we have not focused sufficiently on human development, for that matter. That it is not just about providing nutrition or education, it is about overall human development. And the question had a similar sense. What we'll do is, I do not remember the exact question right now, because it is a good question. It is a good question, multifaceted question that we are going to discuss, but we'll be taking up that question tomorrow. So what I'll do is, I'll just look at the question, what was the exact question, and we'll be discussing it tomorrow. So till here, if you have any problems, any doubts, any questions, please ask. And else what we'll do is, tomorrow we'll take up the next chapter that relates to development process and the development industry, basically about the role of your civil society organizations. That is the chapter we'll take up tomorrow. Do you have any questions so far? Again, you remember, if something related to your national education policy, any dimension of your national education policy finds a mention in the current affairs, it becomes important. And also, those are easier questions to write, because in the introduction, for example, in the introduction to this question, you can simply contextualize talking about these draft regulations. So introduction is clear. Also, these current affair based topics, you'll find all the content in the newspapers. You'll find all the content in your monthly magazine provided by Byju's. You'll find all the content in your daily current affairs analysis as well. So if these kind of questions show up in the examination, these are the easiest spots. These are the questions that you'll be able to write easily. And these kind of questions help you understand that what kind of questions can you expect coming from current affairs. Because when you think of health education, generally everyone sticks to the challenges faced, etc. That too in a very vague manner. But the best way to go about it is using the policy framework and fitting in everything in that structure, because it'll help you identify questions. So the way we are talking about this question of internationalization, you already know they can ask a question on the other dimension of internationalization as well. If there is if you have your National Research Foundation, if they start working on this dimension, they start working on it, you can find a question on National Research Foundation, for that matter. So this policy is going to help you identify questions from your current affairs, help you prepare for your mains answers beforehand, and which is a brilliant thing. Okay, so if you do not have any questions, let's do one thing. Let's continue our discussion tomorrow. We'll take up the next chapter, that is your NGOs, civil society, self-help groups, etc. And the last module will be about issues related to design and implementation when it comes to schemes, policies, and programs for various vulnerable sections. Along with that part, we will briefly take up two vulnerable sections. One is one is your third gender, transgenders, and the second one is your tribals. Those two vulnerable sections will be taken up, and I'll tell you the framework for other vulnerable sections as well. You need not worry about it. These two are sections where students have the least understanding. They get confused every now and then. So we'll take up those two vulnerable sections, because the questions do not come on vulnerable sections. Please note this. The question comes on the issues related to design and implementation of policies, programs, and schemes related to vulnerable sections. Okay. Okay, then thanks to you two for being a patient listener throughout the day. Let's take up and try to wind up our syllabus tomorrow. But if I'm not able to wind up tomorrow, then you would have to bear me for another day, that is on next Saturday. Okay. So thank you everyone, and have a good night.